whoa, what's happening? Nobody talks about it. And if they do, it's kind of like people are afraid of the subject. I'm going to attempt to articulate a theme that I have observed in so many new parents, including myself, definitely myself. And I'll speak from my own experience, of course, because that's what I can talk about. But I feel like a lot of people can relate to this. But the problem is nobody talks about it. And if they do, it's kind of like people are afraid of the subject. It's very touchy and sensitive and uncomfortable. And again, like this channel, I just want to make it a really safe space for everyone to come and be like, oh, she's a mess. I'm a mess too. Like, I'm not alone. I am, as of recording this, 10 months, about a little over 10 months postpartum with my first baby. And I just want to shout out and thank you to the person who left this comment talking about the subject of mourning the version of your parents you kind of wish that you had for your kid, for your family, for yourself. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, which is why I think this person brought it up. You have these ideas of like what parenthood will be like, and then you go into it and you're like totally shocked. Like so many of us are so shocked by how hard it is, how intense, how your emotions are everywhere, how you just feel so disoriented, especially if you're a mom. Like I think moms and dads go through walking a parallel journey, but you are also living in alternate universes at the same time. Part of Mattress Sense is rediscovering your new self, your new reality, your new identity. I remember, hearing kind of bits and pieces of this as a pregnant, expecting first-time mom, and you kind of get an idea like, oh yeah, I've been through a lot of life transitions before. Oh my gosh, like I had no idea how humbling it would be. It's unlike any transition. It just flips your whole life upside down, inside out. Your ways of thinking, operating, behaving, like prioritizing, value system, like everything is just like, whoa, what's happening? With that, right? Like with any change, there is inevitably like this need, this necessity to grieve. In like other transitions, you can probably get by more without really recognizing and acknowledging the discomfort of the grief of what you used to have and what you no longer have. Graduating high school, graduating college, moving to a new place, like it's definitely bittersweet, but I feel like because there's so much that you can kind of project, like looking forward, like, oh, there's so much ahead of me to look forward to. In my experience, it was a lot easier to kind of be like, oh yeah, I miss, my old friends and my old life and how close people were and like in proximity in college, and now life after college is definitely different, but you have so many other things going on for you. You don't focus so much on the loss, if that makes sense, even though it's still there. And so I just observe that people to varying degrees can either acknowledge that grief and kind of work through that, or maybe not even at all and kind of just like keep pushing forward. But I found that in parenthood, the grief is different. Like it's a different frequency. It's not like in your face. I would say it's kind of like, I was thinking about this earlier, it's kind of like a new pigment, like a new shade of color. It's not like a totally different color where you're seeing your world totally different. You're like, grief is everywhere, but you're kind of aware, like there's something different about how I'm experiencing life. You literally feel like your pre-baby self and your post-baby self. It's like BC and AD. It's already a lot, like as a new mom, especially, and your hormones are everywhere. You're on an emotional roller coaster, just having all the feels about everything and being so overwhelmed. What I was going to say about grief in terms of being a new parent is that you don't have as clear of a path of hope. Like it's your first rodeo, and you are likely, if you're in the trenches, you're just like, oh my gosh, I cannot see a way out of this hole of darkness. That's how I felt. And so that's why I share my experience and post, online, because I want to give people hope, like sharing my experience of like, I was in your shoes. It was terrible the first few months for myself, and it gets so much better. And just having that hope, something to look forward to, I feel like can help sometimes to be like, oh my gosh, it does get better. But yeah, it's a lot harder when you don't have as many blatantly exciting things in front of you. It's more like 24/7, all day, every day, you are going crazy, especially if your newborn has colic, especially if you have postpartum depression. And that's what I've been thinking a lot about ever since reading this comment and thinking more about this. Not just grieving like an idea of like what you wish your parents could be for your family, for your kids, like hanging out with your kids, supporting your family. I think a lot of new parents without a close network of support system, family nearby, or healthy family relationships, or even like family, like your parents being healthy, like physically, mentally healthy enough, emotionally healthy enough to help out both both me and my husband have aging parents. They had us when they were older, so now they can't even like pick our baby up from the ground because she's a 99 percentile baby and they have low energy. So there's just all this complexity, especially when you kind of wrestle with the internal conflict of like, oh, I wish if only things could be different. You know, you see some other people on social media having like thriving families with like healthy family support systems and everyone's helping each other, and it's like, oh, that's so good for them. But our case is not like that. Tell me in the comments if you relate to this. Just being really transparent and honest. That is the reality of life. Is it's inevitable to see things out there sometimes and be like, yeah, that is something that I wish I had, but the reality is that that's just not my reality. There's only so much you can do about it. The grief there is like what you have to let go of, recognizing that what you wanted just can't be the reality, and you have to kind of manage your expectations around it. In grief, there is like denial, all the different stages, and I do feel like that also happens when you become a new parent, because you have these expectations of like, not just parents, like yourself, right? Like, oh, I thought I was gonna bounce back immediately, and I thought I was gonna be this put together mom, and you know, you just have all these ideas of what life you thought would look like, and it's just so different compared to your expectations. And it's not your fault, because so few of us actually have a real picture of parenthood painted for us. So we paint these pictures and then we go into it being like, oh, it's not so glorified and romanticized as I had thought. It's definitely so beautiful, but it's like beautiful in a different way. Similar to, I guess, marriage. If you aren't studying about marriage, learning about marriage before you get married, and you only have like a Disney version of marriage in your mind, you're like, oh wow, this is definitely a lot harder than I thought. Two messy people coming together, make big decisions and even make little decisions together. At the same time, there's also so many other aspects in terms of grieving as a new parent. So some things I can think of, and let me know other examples that you can think of, because I know there's more, but these are just a few that come up, is like grieving your pre-baby life, your pre-baby freedom, flexibility. You could just do whatever you wanted. You could do chores uninterrupted. You could be on your laptop and not be guilty about like looking at the screen instead of your baby. You could leave the house. You could just take your keys and your purse and just go on your happy way. The list goes on, right? Also, grieving friendships. Like, I think friendships also look really different as a parent. Maybe this could be a separate video sometime, but as soon as I was going through the newborn postpartum trenches, I was like, oh wow, I need mom friends. Like, this is why they emphasize like get mom friends, join mom groups, you know, because it is tough. You need a support group. You need people who get it, because it's like very specific challenges that you physically cannot understand unless you go through giving birth and having your hormones all over the place and having like full care of your newborn baby, being like, what the heck am I doing? The list goes on. But also grieving your marriage, grieving how your marriage used to be, just basically so many things in your old life are so different now. And it's not saying it's worse, because I actually feel like it's a lot richer and it's a lot like there's so much more meaning and clarity, and I'm just like really grateful for my life. Honestly, I'm every day, just like multiple times a day, I catch myself being like, wow, thank you, God. Thank you for these blessings, for my family, for my baby, my husband, myself. Even though it is messier than it has ever been, it's not the neat packaged ribbon version that you see on a lot of people's social media highlights, or even like what you see out about when people bring out their babies. It's because, you know, they're having a better day, or, you know, they're managing better than usual, but you don't see all the behind the scenes in their lives, in their marriage, in their mental health, in the imposter syndrome or lies and mindset battles that they're going through. You know, everybody goes through internal struggles that oftentimes they don't even know themselves. Like, we've been so conditioned, I feel, in society to be disconnected from ourselves, to be so hyper focused on performing, productivity, just external things, that I find that it's very common for women, when I try to ask them how they're doing or feeling and kind of sharing my heart and trying to see like, you know, how are you really doing? I find that a lot of women struggle to really identify that. I totally empathize, because I was like that for most of my life. I would say the turning point started when I met my husband, who is super empathetic. He's an emotional health coach. You know, I have him to thank. I have my therapists to thank, my counselors, coaches I worked with, because I've been doing this emotional health, like internal work for years now, and it's been a journey, an ongoing, it'll be a lifelong journey. But another thing to grieve, that I think is very obvious for parents, is your baby. Like, your baby is changing so fast before your eyes that you don't have time to like catch up. Like, I've talked about this on other videos, but it's like, oh my gosh, how is she so different? Like, just 1 or 2 months or even weeks, you know, especially when they're a newborn, they change right before your eyes. And then you, as a mom, you're like, oh my gosh, like, soon you're gonna be a kid and then a teenager, and then you're gonna go off on your own. And then, you know, you just like feel like, and everyone tells you too, it's like goes by in a blink. Yeah, you're just like grieving. I feel like constantly the previous version of your baby. Now that my baby's 10 months old, I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss when you used to be so small, and I can't believe you're like growing so fast. And it's a weird thing because you're actually, I find myself grieving her current version as she's still 10 months old. I'm like already future tripping. I'm already thinking like, oh my gosh, soon you're gonna be a toddler, then a kid, teenager, you know. And I'm like missing her current version. It's so weird. It's so weird, guys. Tell me if I'm not alone in this. All in all, I really do think it's so much of it is just these expectations that we had, what we once had. I feel like it's just those two categories as a whole, like what you thought was going to be the case for your life or for your family or for yourself. For example, I'm trying to think of a concrete example for myself. I thought that, you know, after settling into motherhood, the first couple months, I would be back on my business track, my entrepreneurial endeavors, because I have this entrepreneurial scene in me and I want to do all kinds of things. I have so many things that I want to try, I want to launch, I want to help people with, I want to serve. And the honest truth is I am still finding my footing like 10 months in. And so that is one thing I've definitely wrestled with and continue to wrestle with, is what is the right timing for things. I don't want to get in over my head and like lose sight of what's actually important right in front of me, which right now for me personally, I want to just really be faithful and patient, diligent with like being a mom and being a wife and being, you know, keeping her home and keeping my friendships and building new friendships, making mom friends, and just like settling in. I feel like has taken much longer and is taking much longer than what my pre-baby self had kind of imagined in my head, because I see on Instagram like, oh, like this mom 5 weeks in or 4 weeks in postpartum seems like she's doing great. Meanwhile, I was like beating myself up being like, I am 8 weeks in a postpartum and I am still losing my mind. I am still so depressed and in a fog and I don't even know who I am. It's just like, I think there's so many lies that we don't even know our lies. Again, and I think that's why it's so important for us to all share our real life experiences, the unfiltered, messy versions. Otherwise, we just see people's highlight reels and we're comparing our really messy realities to that and thinking like, what the heck? Like, why am I not, you know, better or have more things together? One thing I've kind of reflected on in terms of grief and all these things, whether it's, you know, grieving aging parents, not being able to have as much time with your child and with you, and not being able to have this picture in your mind of like what your family could look like or should look like, and also grieving your expectations and in your old life and all these things. So many of us were never taught how to sit with these emotions, how to process them. We are afraid of them because they might overtake us, and then we get flooded, we get so sad and we don't know what to do with these feelings. And I think it's so important, especially in parenting. You want to teach your kid how to handle big emotions. It starts with you. It starts with you also learning how to do that and model that for them. What I've really been trying to challenge myself in these past few years, but especially now as a mom, is to really be honest with myself, like to label it, you know, to identify it, to really observe and not judge myself for these uncomfortable feelings, because they're not bad. At the end of the day, our emotions are not bad or good, or, you know, they're just signs. They're signals signaling like, oh, there's something going on internally. Let me explore that. Let me be curious and compassionate towards myself. My husband and I, we have a podcast about emotional health, and we talk about how this stuff is intentionality over a long period of time of practice and consistency, but it is possible. Like, if it's possible for someone like me who used to be very toxically positive, don't be sad, don't be a Debbie Downer, everything's great, I still catch myself oftentimes having those tendencies from my childhood, and I have to like be honest with myself and sit with those emotions and like let myself feel the grief, not be afraid of it, because if I'm afraid of it, I'll just like sweep it under the rug. It'll just keep kind of building up slowly and also like make me anxious and suppressed, resentful, bitter. You just don't want that. You want to live freely and authentically and not let your emotions control you. At the end of the day, you want to be able to dictate what you believe and how you're functioning based on being able to healthily process your emotions. If you are watching this and you can kind of relate to what I'm talking about, I highly recommend seeking out a really good trusted therapist or counselor, because that is really helpful. Yeah, you can vent to your spouse or you can vent to your friends, but having someone who's actually a third party, like trained and specialized to help you recognize your blind spots, help you process healthily, has been a lifesaver for me personally, as someone who used to be really afraid of these feelings, let alone something as heavy or serious as grief. Life has changed, especially as a parent. You see change right in front of you and within you. And with any change, there will be things that you lose, things that pass away. Like literally, you have to recognize like, oh, this feeling I have is actually a normal part of what happens when something goes away that I loved, that I enjoyed. And actually, it's a blessing to have this feeling, because it means I actually loved that thing or that version of myself or that phase of life. What a gift it is that you actually can grieve that, rather than be like, oh, good riddance, like I want to move on and I don't want that. It's the other side of the same coin of gratitude, blessing, joy. The other side of that same coin is also grief and loss, because things will inevitably change in life as you go on. I think there's nothing like parenthood that magnifies that and amplifies that even more, because you literally experience that every day constantly. And then it's definitely something that I remember being like, whoa, like what is this feeling? What do I do with it? Especially when I was a freshly postpartum mom, I quickly realized like, oh wow, I think this is going to be a permanent situation, sensation, experience that I go through now that I'm a mom. Nothing will be the same anymore in terms of not feeling this feeling and experiencing this throughout my life as I see my child grow up and I see myself and my husband grow. And it's just different, because before you have a baby, it's not so stark, but having a kid, I feel like, is a little bit having like a near death experience where it's just like right in your face. Like, this is the truth, that time is precious and it flies by, and you just have that constant reminder all the time. So I hope this makes sense. Let me know in the comments if you relate at all, or other things that you've been finding yourself grieving as a parent. We really need healthy dialogue around this to let each other know that we are not alone in feeling this. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's healthy to acknowledge and process and to find other people to support you in those emotions and experiences. So if you like reflections like this that are unfiltered, raw, and real about motherhood, feel free to subscribe and like so that more parents can find this and know that they are not alone. And I will see you guys in the next one.